We're not doing it to create a fight. We're just doing it because it's a fact.
Tonight, a welcome sign is creating a deep divide between the Dene and Metis in the Northwest Territories.
We are not looking to pillage and ruin our own waters and our lands. We actually want to safeguard them.
A bill to stop more oil tanker traffic on the BC coast meets resistance by Indigenous groups.
Cannabis works on a different pain receptor than the opiates do. And, we don't see people overdosing on cannabis.
And why it can be a matter of life and death when the pain gets to be too much and opioids no longer provide relief. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. A dispute about ties to traditional land has been brewing in the southern part of the Northwest Territories.
It's a complex subject and one that requires an understanding of history and rights. Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs sat down with both parties to learn more.
This land is a lifeline to culture and tradition for many people. For Pat Martel of Catlodeche First Nation and Ken Hudson, Métis from the South Slave, being on the land is where they feel most at home. Both men are knowledge holders and want the best for their people. But what about land rights that overlap traditional territories? This sign behind me has been standing now for a few weeks. It was erected by the Northwest Territories Métis Nation, but not everyone welcomes it. Chief and council from the Catlodeche First Nation have been vocally opposing this sign. Martel shares his history proudly.
This is my traditional area. If it was somebody else's traditional area, I wouldn't be standing here pointing things out on.
He says the NWT Métis Nation has no claim on this land, but the Métis say they are descendants of the Catlodeche and have a right to the land.
Those are our relations, those Treaty Indians of that day. Those are our relations. Our rights should go back on those people as well, not only the history of the Métis.
Catlodeche First Nation says when they signed Treaty 8, the Métis were not living in the territory now being questioned.
Part of the village that I grew up in. When we got together, I traveled this road with my dad as long as I can remember.
But Hudson says the boundary for Métis people in the north stretches.
The Métis have moved all over the place in pursuing wildlife and trapping and whatnot.
Here is the land the NWT Métis Nation is claiming as a traditional territory. Over 270,000 square kilometers. But there is a lot of overlap onto Catlodeche's territory. The portion of KFN land that's within the proposed Métis agreement area is only 2.3% of the overall Métis agreement area. However, that proposed Métis agreement area makes up 63% of overall KFN primary traditional territory.
Where the little village was, they call it a Kekaitli. Yeah? So all those
Martel says the Métis are claiming KFN land they traded on but did not live on. Currently, KFN holds exclusive rights to the land, something Martel defends.
I think, first of all, people have to prove that that's where they're from, But lately, with the Métis Association that you're talking about, lately we were asking to come to us and tell us about their traditional land, what they're talking about.
The Métis say they're certain in their land agreement, which they've worked on for decades and are close to finishing.
At this time in our claim process, since '96, we're not answering to anybody about our rights to the areas within the South Slave.
Catlodeche First Nation has formally called for the Métis to take down the sign. As for Pat Martel and Ken Hudson, they are defending what they know, the land.
I need to speak out on it because that's what our elders used to tell us, that, you got to have your traditional, you got to have your land.
We're not doing it to create a fight. We're just doing it because it's a fact.
Charlotte Moore-Jacobs, APTN National News, Hay River.
We want to hear what you think. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/APTN News. You can also follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Indigenous news.
A group of leaders who say they represent 200 First Nations from British Columbia and Alberta are in Ottawa this week. They're trying to put a halt to Bill C-48, also known as the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
After meeting with senators on the Hill, these 12 leaders addressed the media. Kelvin Helene is the president of an Indigenous-owned pipeline called Eagle Spirit Energy. He says Bill C-48 is impacting their communities and the economic opportunities in the oil sector.
The ban is the most sweeping ban of its kind. It's unprecedented. It's proposing to ban products on half of the BC coast.
Helene says the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act will further harm their communities. That's why they're filing a complaint against the federal government at the United Nations.
We have communities who have 90% unemployment, who have a host of social statistics that have been compared to third world countries like Nigeria and Sudan, and they're having to take what meager dollars they have to take the federal government to court for imposing a bill like Bill C-48 on them. And so that's what we're here to tell the senators today.
Just last week, a group of BC leaders stood in the same spot, expressing their concerns about the tanker traffic.
We are salmon people, we are ocean people. Our way of life depends on a healthy ecosystem.
But Chief Isaac Labakan Avram from the Woodland Cree First Nation in Alberta says that's exactly the reason why Indigenous people should be involved in these sectors.
We are not looking to pillage and ruin our own waters and our lands. We actually want to safeguard them. But how can we safeguard them without tools and resources to do that? Economic tools. Nothing in this world is free. We all know that. Our lifestyle and the quality of life is increasing daily.
Charles Fox of the Indian Resource Council says putting a permanent ban on tanker traffic does not accommodate the needs of the people.
We also have grave concerns over this Bill C-48 and the implication that it's going to have. You may not see it today, but for the past 150 years, we're trying to turn that around for ourselves. Obviously, government, and I believe this, will never do that for us. So we need to come at it from an economic perspective.
According to Helene, the leaders propose that Bill C-48 be completely shelved or an alternative transit route be put in place. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The National Inquiry of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls is in its second day in Ottawa. Oral closing submissions were from the Government of Canada, Amnesty International, and Inuit Women's Associations. APTN's Angel Moore was there.
The next party withstanding that we will be...
Parties withstanding presented to the inquiry. Anne Turley, counsel for the Government of Canada, spoke first.
It has been both a heart-wrenching and a heart-warming journey. It has been heart-wrenching to hear about the lived experiences of violence, exclusion, and racism across Canada.
She says Canada's commitment was to ensure parties withstanding and the commissioners could hear direct evidence from government officials about policies and programs.
All of these witnesses testified candidly and did not only speak to promising practices, but also outlined challenges, how they are being addressed moving forward.
Commissioner Kaya Robinson asked Turley what Canada thinks about colonization contributing to the cause of violence.
The ongoing elements of colonization within the foundation of this country's laws, policies.
Turley says Canada has acknowledged the historic and current effects of colonization. Chief Commissioner Marion Buller had the last word with the Government of Canada.
I want to thank you and your team for really taking an active involvement, not just a watching brief, as you said, which would have been very easy for the Government of Canada to do. So I want to thank you and your team for all of your work.
Rebecca Hoodloose, the representative for 5 Inuit women's organizations, says Inuit women struggle with isolation and lack of resources.
Inuit women have no shelter to go to for help or to escape escalating domestic violence. Inuit women who are in danger don't know their options or rights.
Pam Palmater spoke on behalf of Canadian Feminist Alliance for International Action and Partners Canada Without Poverty. She says Canada has failed Indigenous women.
Failed to establish legal protection of their rights, failed to refrain from engaging in ongoing acts of discrimination, and failed to take every appropriate measure to eliminate discrimination against Indigenous women.
The inquiry continues with a submission from the Native Women's Association of Canada on Wednesday morning. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Ottawa.
It's time for a quick break.
But first, a look at tonight's episode of Face to Face. Our guest this week is actor, musician, and activist Tom Jackson. Among the topics we discussed is the potential for the return of new episodes of North of 60.
And there's something in the wind out there. We're not sure. I'm not sure where that's at. I'm going to make the phone call, and maybe you should.
Yeah.
Just for the heck, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have somebody. But there was a conversation that I had with Tom about the possibility of developing, not my developing, but they were developing himself. And I think he was working with Tina, and Tina was working with Barb Samuels, who was one of the original producers of this. And the possibility of maybe we'll do 6 episodes.
Starting on the East Coast, -5 with snow for Charlottetown and Halifax. 13 below under sunny skies for Nain, 14 below in Cartwright. -10 for Montreal and Quebec City, 19 below for Saguenay. +1 under the sun in Toronto, -1 in snow in Sault Ste. Marie. 0 with snow for Thunder Bay, -2 in Wawa. -6 for Puckatawagan and Thompson, -5 in Norway House. 3 below for Gimli and Winnipeg, -1 and snow for Dauphin. 0 with snow for Regina and Yorkton, -1 in Saskatoon. -4 in Uranium City, -5 in Stony Rapids.
Welcome back. Last week in Saskatchewan, a coroner's inquest jury cleared RCMP over the death of Bryden Whitstone, who was fatally shot last year in North Battleford following a high-speed chase with police. The family of the 22-year-old say they are unsatisfied with the jury's findings. The jury could have declared Whitstone's death a homicide, a suicide, or undetermined, but they only found that it was caused by a gunshot wound without assigning cause or blame. The family is requesting an independent investigation.
We don't want Aboriginal people to get killed. We don't want anyone to get killed unnecessarily by police.
And that this kind of situation that we are going through stops.
The first Indigenous chair of the Thunder Bay Police Board says a healing circle can help those involved. In the video that allegedly shows a police officer striking a youth on a gurney. Selena Reitberger was in charge of Anishinaabe-Aski legal services for several years before retiring a year ago. During that time, she helped bring restorative justice programs to communities in the north. Reitberger said she's seeing, quote, miraculous things happen at the Indigenous Peoples Court in Thunder Bay and believes it can help the relationship between police and Indigenous peoples.
My feeling is, in this particular case as well, there are healing is needed on both sides, and I think if we can get the individuals into the circle and they can hear how their actions have affected each other and move on to some healing, because they're being given time to heal they're overcoming these problems, and I think that's what these two individuals need to do as well.
The blood reserve in southern Alberta has been hit with more than 60 overdoses in the past month. The community's been quick to respond, but what are the causes of these addictions and how can intervention come before it's too late? Tamara Pimentel reports.
It doesn't take much to overdose on fentanyl.
There was one case where one pill of fentanyl was split in four, and 4 different people shared the one being in fentanyl. All of them overdosed and required more than 6 vials of naloxone to revive them.
And witnessing an overdose is a daily occurrence for Dr. Esther Tailfeathers of the Blood Tribe Department of Health. In November, there were nearly 60 overdoses. The community has been quick to save lives, but Tailfeathers says the root causes of addictions need to be treated. And one cause is a faulty health policy.
The prescribing of prescription opioids is part of people getting hooked on opioids, and it's a slippery slope. The issue of opioid addiction is basically treating the pain that we have and the trauma that we've had over the last, century and a half from, colonialism, racism.
Tailfeather says a low opioid prescription, like Tylenol 3s, could be a start to building a tolerance.
When they reach a level where it's not working for them anymore, then they seek the more potent stuff like fentanyl and heroin from the streets.
She says CBD, a cannabis product, can be an alternative to pain management, but CBD is not eligible for coverage under the non-insured health benefits of Indigenous Services Canada.
It's a thought, and it's what people are thinking may be helpful because cannabis works on a different pain receptor than the opiates do, and we don't see people overdosing on cannabis. I think that expanding our mental health services and our counseling services for emotional trauma and recognizing that Indigenous people are really quite hurt by residential school and the histories that we have, the 60s scoop, foster care, and just what we've carried into our own homes from the trauma from residential school.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News on the Blood Reserve.
A new cannabis store is open in Winnipeg, and it's located on the city's first urban reserve. Meta Cannabis Supply Company opened its doors on the Long Plain Madison Reserve. The store is staffed by Long Plain members who've been trained by National Access Cannabis. Its manager, Heather Peltier, is excited to take on the new role and expects the location to be one of the busiest yet.
It's huge. Like, obviously, it's a growing industry. It's very new. I think the benefits are going to work greatly in the community's favor.
The storefront is only a temporary location. Long Plain hopes to build a larger one as part of a hotel complex planned for the urban reserve. This is the 5th Meta Cannabis Supply Company store to open in the province.
Alberta is looking to build a new refinery in the face of an ongoing oil price crisis. Premier Rachel Notley announced the plan, saying the province will explore interest from the private sector to build the new oil facility. She says it will create jobs and increase the value of Canadian oil.
As the owners of this resource, we are saying once and for all, let's stop the talk and start acting. Let's start making more of the products that the world needs right here at home. We will consider interest in new greenfield investments or an expansion of facilities at existing brownfield sites. Submissions will be accepted until February 8th, 2019. Now, I'm not going to prejudge what they might suggest. What I will say, however, is this. The project must make sense for Alberta. It must have a return on investment for Albertans.
Premier Notley says any submissions should diversify how the province uses its energy resources and include participation from Indigenous groups. So Canada battles the Russians on an Alberta First Nation.
We will have that story after a quick break and the rest of tomorrow's weather. picking back up in northern Alberta. 0 for Fort McMurray, -1 in Peace River. +3 in Lethbridge and Medicine Hat. 0s for Calgary and Edmonton. +10 for Tofino. Showers and 9 above in Victoria. +4 in Bella Coola. -3 in Fort Nelson. 2 above with snow in Prince George. -20 in Old Crow. 19 below and snow for Rock River. In the NWT, -4 for Fort Liard and Trout Lake. 19 below in Norman Wells. -23 in Sax Harbor. Snow and 15 below for Paulatuck. -13 in Repulse Bay. 20 below for Cambridge Bay. -20 in Clyde River. 23 below in Resolute. Welcome back. A small community in Alberta had a packed arena with people wanting to watch a very special hockey game. Team Canada West faced off against Russia in an exhibition match at the World Junior A Challenge. APTN's Chris Stewart was at the historic game.
Hundreds of residents from Frog Lake First Nation filled the seats at the New Horizons Center to witness a rivalry that has been going on for half a century. Team Canada West against Russia in an exhibition game. Frog Lake managed to secure the game for the World Junior A Challenge taking place in nearby Bonnyville. Clifton Cross is the Youth Recreation Director for Frog Lake. He helped make this game a reality.
And then being given the privilege to actually host an international game in the First Nation, which to my understanding is one of the first ever to happen. So we're honored, and I'm overwhelmed with the support in our community.
Residents here were excited to see such a high caliber of hockey played between two hockey titans.
Oh, Canada West, talk about a story, rivalry. It's been going on for a while, and it's great to have it here at my home reserve.
Oh, yeah, I think it's absolutely amazing. Like, small town, like, First Nations community to have such caliber of hockey in a little place like this. I think it's amazing for the community, the surrounding community, the kids who may never get the opportunity to see anything like this.
The game itself lived up to expectations. Canada West did their best, but it wasn't enough. Russia won the game 5-2. The rest of the 5-team tournament will be played in Bonnyville, with the championship game played this Friday. This game and this night will be special for Frog Lake.
For our kids to actually experience this, the 216 kids that actually flow through our minor hockey system, to get them to come out and watch prospects in the game in our community is a huge thing. And I hope they don't forget about it anytime soon. We won't.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Frog Lake First Nation.
That is an excited community.
We're very excited. I would
like
be
that.
too. That's some great hockey.
It looked like
to
a
see.
good time. Well, that's all the time that we have for your news tonight. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow live at 3 p.m. Eastern when we put the indigenization of public education in focus. I'm Melissa Ridgen.
And don't forget to stay tuned right now for Face to Face with Tom Jackson and Dennis Ward. Have a good night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.